right, so today I'm going to talk about Know Your Magnetic Field. It's actually based on a book titled Know Your Magnetic Field. Well, it's sort of written by an author, the healer, Bill Gray or William Gray is the author in the book. It's actually written by a nurse, an anonymous nurse, who actually was healed by him and then wanted to study with him. And then she wrote down basically what he told her and what she observed with what the healings he was doing. So it's actually really wonderful to have a clinical person who was literally sort of following him around and seeing what he was doing and trying to understand the way he views the human body and he views healing. He had a unique viewpoint. He was a true maverick. He just followed his own sort of inner, well, he would call it the ring, actually. He received wisdom from what he called the ring surrounding the earth. Sort of like a global mind, and he would ask questions, and he would, try to see what he was observing. So he's really just, trying to figure things out himself. He was thinking for himself. Okay, original thinker. All right. He's also talked about in the book Born to Heal by Ruth Montgomery, but he's anonymous in that book. And he was born, we think, around the end of the 19th century and died in the early 1970s. And this is like the only photo that we know that we have of him. The reason we know about him is there's another healer called Rosalind Breuer. She's a rather well-known energy healer in the United States, a clairvoyant. She worked with Dr. Valerie Hunt as a young woman and helped Valerie Hunt with her studies of the chakras, actually, doing electrical measurements of the chakras. And she would actually give clairvoyance of what was happening in those chakras. Very important work, very early in her life. But at some point, she was asked to do energy work for William Gray. She'd never heard of him, but she was asked by a friend, a common friend, to come to the hospital, that he needed some healing. And so she started to work on him. And she reports him as saying, well, you're not bad, girl, but you sure are slow. Bill placed his large hand over her navel, saying, do it like this. He then sent a jolt of current through her, which she says nailed my feet to the floor and filled her with intense buzzing and heat. And after that, she was like initiated, basically, in this energy that he was using, and she went on to use that type of energy herself in her own healing practice. So what is his original ideas? Well, he says we are no stronger than our magnetic field. He emphasized the magnetic field and the nervous system. Those were the cornerstones of his healing treatments, which is pretty unique for an energy healer. Most energy healers talk about chakras and field and just feeling the energy. And I mean, they don't really specifically say, oh, I'm going to zap your nerves. I'm going to put some nerve energy in there. So he was unique on that part. He's claimed that when the magnetic field was depleted, and we all have a magnetic field that extends about 2 to 3 feet out, the nerves are partially starved for their fuel or energy, creating spasm or nerve tension through the body. This depletion develops into many serious ailments. And so his whole point was revitalizing the nervous system. That was his simple, and he called himself a mechanic, basically. He was very humble, and he thought he was channeling power, and so he was just the mechanic, just fixing the machines here. He would place his fingers over nerves and nerve relay centers. His goal was to rebuild the nerves, relax the spasms, and feed the required energy. But he had some other ideas. He felt that the healer energies must match or synchronize with the energies of the patient. It's kind of an interesting idea. And the nurse resonated with it. She put in the book that she'd noted that she was, with certain patients, she could really help, that they sort of responded to her and they clicked, and I've seen it. I've actually seen it also. There's certain patient-nurse combos and physician-patient combos where there's an energy that clicks and the patient feels better. And things work better. So he actually had his own theories on that. He had a funny astrology where he thought we were born under 3 stars and that we would have 3 different energies, fundamental energies that were ours. And those energies would either be opposing or complementary to other people. So there was, that there are different mixes that we're born with. He's treated a number of different ailments, including arthritis, stroke, angina, fluid accumulation, spastic conditions. I just note, he seemed to be, the nurse noted that he seemed to be very good with fluid accumulation. So people who have like a swollen knee, he was very good at being able to heal that sort of malady. So I just have a couple of case studies just to give you a sense of what he was doing and what was happening. The first one was a cerebral palsy, a 15-month-old baby, female. Legs were straight, rigid, hands clenched, motionless since birth. Head was floppy, could not be held up, basically. Her head had to be supported. This is typically nowadays, even now, considered a birth injury. And it's not, you can't instantly change it. It's often multiple surgeries, multiple physical therapies, even lifelong. You can't always correct everything, the damage that's been done. But anyway, so he took this baby, put his fingers over her magnetic field region in the lower abdomen, which we would, in the traditional Chinese, we would call this a dantian, as sort of an energy storage area. He worked with that area a lot. He called that area the magnetic field region. And directed energy current there, releasing the nerves and spasm. Because remember, these are rigid. These muscles are rigid here. Her skin color, within minutes, improved. The legs relaxed. And she was able to move her legs up and kick the air like a normal little baby. Fist unclenched. He spoke to the child. The mother picked her up. Head wobbled a bit. Came to upright position. This is one session. So you're going to see. And we'll get to it in a moment. But it seems when you focus your intent on the nerves, you're dealing with a very excitable tissue. And so right there, so most healers don't do that. I mean, we're looking, oh, you have an arm pain. Okay, let me just work with the arm. We're not focusing on the nerve specifically. So there's sort of this intent that's really seems very powerful. He did a lot of arthritis. Doris was funny about this. She said that it was like a circus. It was hilarious, the people's reactions, because they would come in, they could barely move. They could, they couldn't get the arm up, I mean, they couldn't lift their leg up. And she said their faces when suddenly they could lift a leg, when they could lift an arm. She said she couldn't believe, it was unbelievable. So anyway, so this arthritis patient, arthritis in both arms and legs and limbs were stiff, awkward, full of pain, pulling pain in the chest. Knees and toes were swollen and painful. And how he viewed it, the nerves have lost their required vitality with age and are not conducting the energy current through the body. And so as the body slows down, calcium basically gets deposited where it shouldn't get deposited. And things, and you could say that with connective tissue too. You could say the body doesn't, the energy isn't flowing and things sort of get disordered, a little disordered. He placed his fingers over the chest pain, the neck, shoulders. The chest pain was better. She could breathe better. It's a big thing with this technique. People can breathe better. He rotated her right arm, which was stiff, frozen, burned out the calcium in the shoulder, allowing her to raise her arm high. And she was startled because he said, "Raise your arm." She said, I can't brush my hair. And up the arm went. Anyway, worked on her left knee, softening the calcium, allowing her to lift her leg up onto a chair. She didn't think she could do that. She was like, "No, I can't do that. I can't," and she did. So in one session, pain reduction and greater movement. So I know you're all thinking, I can't believe this. But anyway, it's funny. I read this book years ago, and I didn't pick up on this. And then as you age, you start to get aches and pains, and you're like, oh, it's a magnetic field thing. Okay. So, yeah. So. But other cases took longer, so they weren't all instantaneous. This is a rheumatoid arthritis, and as you know, rheumatoid is a serious disease. This woman had a period over 22 years, and she was pretty much bedridden, basically, very crippled with rheumatoid arthritis. Left arm locked and bent, knees immovable and bent, enormously swollen limbs, basically the legs, handicapped. She complained of low body temperature, which we'll get back to in a minute, because he's interested in body temperature too. So after 4 months, and this is the nurse reporting, she sees the woman come back, and she's walking much better. She's able to do household activities, which she couldn't do, and the leg is straighter. The limbs, I said, he was good with fluid. The limbs are normal size. So he, once again, lack of sufficient energy through the nerves, plating joints, forming deposits. So those are just some examples. There's others. He's particularly good with the heart, actually. A lot of healers will avoid working with the heart because it's just, you don't want to put a lot of energy in there because it can be dangerous. But he was very good at listening to the heart and then seeing what nerves were in spasm that were basically pulling on the heart, he described it. And so he would just release those tensions and then the heart would quiet down. So really brilliant, brilliant work. So I'm ready to go up to Cleveland. There's a group now, I think I'm getting to that next point. There's a group near Cleveland that tried to reproduce his style of healing. And they call themselves nervous system energy work. It's developed by psychologists Jim Kepner and Carol DeSanto outside Cleveland. And they've actually sort of retested, rethought out some of the things that he said and to do for themselves to see if it was true. They're actually body psychotherapists, so they're body-oriented psychotherapists, so they're already interested in body work to begin with. So they've also found that the nerves can be conduits for subtle energy, which, of course, anything, subtle energy is moving through the body. But they find that the term magnetic field is confusing because we typically think the whole magnetic field, so they call it the abdominal nerve matrix, a little more scientific sounding, the reservoir for energy. They had nerve plexus down there is got a lot of nerve cells, a lot of nerve fibers in the gut, and a lot of smooth muscles. So there's a lot of tonic activity down there. So that could be one way why it's a reservoir. And they also have found that matching, they actually teach their students how to match their energy with the clients. And they also find the complementary energy, Bill Gray would call it mating fuel. He really talks a lot about husband and wives, how it's very important to have complementary energy. Otherwise, you're like two batteries and you need to recharge each other. And if you're not complementary, then you're sort of not recharging each other, and he sees health issues down the road with both husband and wife. So he actually, his beautiful statement in the book, he said, there's no greater blessing than finding someone at a young age who complements your energy and marrying them, and then you just more success, more health, better health. It's just like that wonderful complementary energy. Yeah. So I think some of you understand what I'm talking about. Yeah. He also, for rebuilding the energy field, he's also very interested in the polarization of the body, and we'll get to that in a moment. And they also use a meditative imagery practice. They also, like him, believe in channeling energy through. It's very Reiki-ish. Some of you know Reiki. But the imagery he's bringing in is light, actually. Sort of a little surprising. But we can talk about that later. So he talks about the different healers, different healing methods, and other people have talked about it, and I've actually looked at it myself a little bit. So he breaks it down into three. So most healers, hands-on healers, are either building up a charge so they can, and I think it's not just discharge into the patient, but building up a charge with the patient and sort of clearing the patient's field, magnetic field, by this charge, basically. You can, if there's stuckness, and it allows the energy to flow through the field. So they're using charge. Qigong and healing touch are examples of this. He also says there's another group that uses touch work and principles like polarity therapists. They'll actually check both sides of the body. They want it all to be even on all sides, and they will check like the temperature on both sides. And if one side's cold compared to the other, they'll warm that side. And so that's a polarity therapy. The other is opening, channeling, a flow of energy from, for example, Reiki. And so they consider that nervous system energy work is like polarity therapy and Reiki. I was a little startled. Here they are charging the nerves, and they don't consider themselves as being a magnetic healer. I'll have to talk to him about that. So I wanted to shift gears. I just sort of wanted now to talk about magnetic fields from other perspectives now that we've heard it from him, and I'll bring his viewpoint in again through the talk. But if we go back to the scientific view of magnetic fields, heart math, of course, this is a figure from heart math. They put it out there that the heart is the major source of the body's magnetic field. And this was early work, done early, 1975, by Dave Cohen. But the magnetic field, the fluctuating magnetic fields are from, not just from the heart muscle, but all the muscles in the body and the nerves. So the nerves and the muscles are the excitable, and so they are producing the magnetic field. And just to note, there's also static magnetic fields in the lungs and the abdomen, like we mentioned before. And then we can detect the heart's magnetic field with squid about up to 3 feet away from the body. So heart math has followed through on that, and they're actually been doing a number of experiments looking at biomagnetic communication between people. This is their language. They're actually using the word magnetic communication because the first early research done by Roland McCready and the heart math people was showing that the heart's magnetic field is modulated by different emotional states, and that's the whole thing of heart coherence that they talk about how good it is for health. And just illustrating down here, appreciation, you can see it's just sort of more of a coherent rather than anger. There's a lot of different peaks. It's not as coherent. The energy of the heart during these different emotions. But then there's the other one, the magnetic signals, and this is what their recent research is looking at, generated by the heart, have the capacity to affect individuals close by, around us, and also pets. They look at animals, and we'll show an example from their work on that. So they've done a number of experiments. They'll hook up 2 people facing each other, and they'll both be recording the heart and the EEG, the brain waves. And they view the brain as an antenna, and the heart as a generator of signals, sending signals out. So they're trying to see if particular people, if someone's across from them, if the heartbeat here shows up in the EEG of the person next to them. And if you're touching hand to hand, that connection's made. That's pretty easy. They do see some people at a distance, and we'll show in the next slide a boy with his dog that you don't have to be touching to have that heart communication. And this is just a boy and his dog. So Josh and Mabel, and they're both hooked up looking at their heart rate, and showing that Josh enters the room, and Mabel goes into more what they call a coherent heart pattern. Heart coherence, more of a sine wave like a signal, shift towards a vagal tone, basically. It's calmer, it's more regular. And the boy is expressing love and appreciation, which puts him into heart coherence, and the dog is sort of matching it. So the 2 of them together, it's beautiful. And so what they're finding is very interesting. It's similar to what Bill Gray said on one of these. The second one, but the first one, they find that the people who are in this heart coherent state are more sensitive, are can pick up more easily. And this ties in with healers, and I'll mention in a minute. When you get into that heart coherence, you can pick up signals of the people more easily, right? That makes sense for healers. And the other, that if you have a stable, they call it a heart coherence, more stable physiology, you're more resistant to negative effects of fields around you. And Bill Gray said that. He said if you have a stronger magnetic field, you don't have to worry about people who have opposing energies. If your field's strong, you can work with anyone, basically. And so we know this. So this goes back. I did some a preliminary work a long time ago, and I should follow up on it because now it's sort of making sense now. Because I did 18 healing touch sessions, 5 healers, 18 clients, measured heart rate variability. And I had 3 practitioners that had went into heart coherence. And that's indicated by the yellow. That's the parasympathetic part of the heart rate variability. And so in those 3 healers, I was measuring magnetic field and random event generator output in the room. Those were the healers who were able to change the reg output. So they were into that coherent state. So I don't know, that I have to dig into that literature a little more, but it didn't seem that you could still, without being coherent, you could still change the magnetic field. So I typically see with young healers, the first thing people learn is how to change the magnetic field, how to charge themselves up and to do, basically clear someone else's field. That's the first step as a healer. It's important, but and then as they develop with the heart, basically learning to manage their own energies better, then they can do even more. And so we see that. And then there's another step, my sort of holy grail, is finding healers who can produce sound, actually. And I've actually heard healers produce sound. You can hear it. And so they use sound in their healing practice. So that's another level. But anyway, there's a lot of different levels. So just looking, going back now, looking with this framework of his magnetic field, the importance of the magnetic field, I go back to my earlier work looking at magnetic field activity during energy healing. And so just to start out with, to note that magnetic field oscillations have been observed in the vicinity of hands-on healers, distant healing, healing touch, Reiki, therapeutic touch, and Qigong practitioners. And it's still not accepted. This is still not accepted. It's found in different healers, different magnetometers, different researchers, but anyway, so someday this will be accepted. But for now, to note that this is a Qigong, a good study. They designed their own magnetometer. They saw with the Qigong Qi emission from the hands that they could see some oscillations. This was a shielded room over here with a squid magnetometer, with a therapeutic touch practitioner, Dr. Zimmerman, and he could see from their hands basically also slow waves, magnetic field oscillations. And then I did a study with 26 healing touch sessions. This was after I originally did, I did some healing, some of that magnetic field oscillations during Bill Bengston's healings with mice. But the thing with mice is they don't have emotions, so you don't get the big stuff. The big stuff is human emotions. That's what really drives the magnetic field changes. They did little physical releases. They don't get the big emotional. This is a big emotional release. And this session here, and this is just what I was observing. I was taking clips in time through the magnetic field in the environment. It was within that window, that close. It's close to the heart chakra, close to the heart. Two different magnetometers within 3 feet. So I think I was recording some of that heart magnetic field. So I took a baseline pre-healing touch as a type of therapy, and then the healer started at 0 there, and then the oscillations start to build. They get larger, and then they slow down and reverse, and then the session ended 60 minutes, and then they take time to come down. So there's a linger effect that we talk about in parapsychology. I see it with the healers. So this case, I wanted to point this out. This case was someone who had grief, had depression, and depression is something that can be helped with energy healing because it's often depression is a heaviness around the head, and we can smooth it out, move it out, clear that heaviness. Sometimes I had one patient. I did a little bit of healing myself. He had like an entity, a negative entity, and she had persistent depression. And so it was a matter of using light to dislodge that entity that was causing her depression. So there is energy healing can be helpful for depression. We found that once again, the big waves were with emotional complaints and with congestion or heaviness. And I don't think yeah, this is another good example. So this was during teaching of a level 2 class. So these are beginner students. And so it's interesting, Healing Touch doesn't talk about initiation. Reiki, they talk about initiating the person into the energies, to feel the energies. If you can feel the energies, it's like you have a memory for them. Then you sort of know, oh, that's what I need to be doing. But we do that with Healing Touch. The instructor gives up and does a demo. This is actually a trauma release. And trauma releases, you can imagine, that's why the waves are so big. There was some trauma that was being released in the classroom. And the waves persisted for several hours. And then we went into a student practice, and it was very quiet. And that's generally known in Healing Touch that the beginning students are not able to hold the charge. So that's the first step in learning to do this type of healing. There's magnetic field oscillations during other activities. And I talked about last year a charge-discharge process because it feels like a charge up and a discharge, even though it's magnetic field and waves. And so here we had a Tai Chi talk, so we see them there. But they're lower amplitude because they're more of a physical release. This is a big group field, the Monroe Institute. There's a lot of resonance in the group, and it was palpable. You could feel it. It was like the air was thick. And so I started recording in the middle of it. I was like, oh my goodness, I've got to get this. I've got to record this. And then it did release. And then in the release part, there was a light flash. Very interesting that these sort of waves, big waves, can be associated with a light flash. That's something I want to look at later on. But there's other different things that can do this charge-discharge. Yawning. I've seen actually one of these waves roll off when someone yawns. It's a big release, right? I mean, it's, progressive relaxation. I love Dr. Norm Shealy has a progressive relaxation tape, and I used it in experiments where you tense a muscle and then you relax it, and that can release it. That you'll see a little wave come off. If there was tension here, you release the tension. And of course, all sorts of wise doctors have talked about, told their patients, just relax. So, anyway, there's one that is always difficult to mention, but the sexual orgasm is a big magnetic field charge and release. So Reich in Oregon, Dr. Reich, Wilhelm Reich, I'm probably mispronouncing his name, but he was right that there's a charge up and a discharge, and we can pick that up with magnetic field. And finally, sacred sites, for some reason, but he also talked about that. There's this charge-discharge isn't just in the human body, it's also out in the environment. And it seems to be almost like, I think it's like a planetary sign that there's life. There's life on the planet. If you've got that charge-discharge anywhere, the lightning, any of that is an indication there's life. And finally, just note in psychokinesis might be a supercharge. It would be wonderful to do a recording like this during one of those. So let me shift. I wanted to get polarity in. This was a study that was pointed out to me recently. A clairvoyant named Pontus. He was able, a young man, he was able to see the aura, and that's not too unusual. You find people who can see the aura, but he saw the polarity within the aura. It was interesting. Two inner fields. So the body's right side is red in his mind, and the left side is blue with a green energy flow down the middle. He perceived these two energy fields moved in separate circles, and I'm not trying to get that's there we go. Separate circles. And so Anderson worked with him. And tried, did the magnets to see if that would affect, if this is like a polarity thing, will magnets affect his view? And he did see that when the North Pole of the magnet was moving towards the blue field, there was an attracting, whereas the South Pole caused a repelling. And so there seemed to be a magnetic polarity. But this was seen earlier by Randolph Stone, a founder of polarity therapy. He also observed the same two-sidedness. Observed energy currents rotating in opposite direction on each side of the body, with positive charge in the anterior right, negative charge on the left. He also described a midline energy current, but saw that as white ultrasonic. So it's just interesting that, if you look, clairvoyants can see sometimes very similar things. So that got me interested, this motor, these two sides of the body being different rotating magnetic fields. I did a little search, and I came up with an induction motor. It's interesting. Just to pop an idea there. Some healers can feel a whole body pulsation. They correspond to a stationary pulsating magnetic field. But this one's important. This is Vicki Slater, is a healing touch practitioner, nurse, a PhD in physics, actually. And so she actually theorizes that energy healing involves magnetic induction. That there's energy, the healer gets her energy moving, gets her current flowing, and that running energy, that current flowing, causes an induction basically in the field, especially if they're putting hands on the other individual or very close proximity, causes changes in the magnetic field around both healer and the client. And what's interesting is her observation, and many healers have noticed this, is that when you hold your running energy in a particular area for a while, it stops basically. And she thinks that's you reach a steady state. And so then you move to another site, a process of magnetic induction. She might be right. So just briefly go back to Bill Gray, talking about energy and body heat. The lack of knowledge on the subject of generation of energy is surprising. In animals, it is natural. Have you ever gone into a barn with horses and cows in freezing weather? The barn is warm. Each healthy animal is warming himself and throwing off enough surplus heat to be noticeable. And of course, there's stories, right? There's stories, yes, thank you. Anyway, so we do, humans can learn this, the tumo, the meditation to produce excess heat. But the big one is Kundalini heat. It seems to me, this is an instance of really heat that we haven't explained, tremendous heat. Some experiences of Kundalini have come and how close they came to death by burning up, really. And so with this thinking, some people have speculated that the strange case spontaneous human combustion, I know I'm taking a leap here, may represent Kundalini gone awry. I know. But no, people have actually said they really thought they were going to burn up. So if we look at that other strange anomaly, right, spontaneous human combustion, and the wonderful book, anyone's read Arnold's book, is really excellent. Really, really good book. It resembles a cremation more than a house fire. The torso and sometimes the head are reduced to ashes, whereas the legs, feet, and hands remain intact. So, yes, it is gross. You just get the legs, but everything else is gone. Yes, I know. But what's interesting is the survivors, there's partial ones. They see blue flames that seem like an electrical fire. Very interesting. Those nerves, right, the electrical, right? And the burns resemble an electrical burn from a high energy source. So interesting. So that wonderful researcher, Sue Benford, and Arnold, together, they looked at an artifact from a spontaneous healing combustion. And this was in an ICEAM journal article years ago. I don't know if any of you remember it. It was actually really well done. They did a lot of really serious measurements on this book cover, and then compared it with a book cover that hadn't been in the room. So there's an effect on artifacts in the room, even though they're not burnt. They're damaged. And so they see this charred, it's blackened. I wouldn't say charred, it's blackened. And so they did a number of experiments. They found that it was caramelized. And there's a sweet odor in these rooms. Thank you. So they thought it could be either neutron emission or proton emission. Very interesting. And they proposed basically a biological nuclear reaction. Very, very maverick of them, right? But there's also Cron's book recently, and I think it's worth reading. He talks about a subatomic basis of healing also. You might take a look at this book. He mentions this one experiment that hasn't been duplicated where a healer is able to change the radioactive decay rate, which is unbelievable. It's unbelievable, actually. So it really needs to be, someone needs to try to replicate this. So that would mean that you're affecting the weak force, basically. So how's energy healing work? I'll try to wrap this up here. There's a dual level mechanism, it seems, but what you call those dual levels, this is Tiller's hypothesis, and he also, because remember you have local healing, and I'm seeing magnetic field changes, and then I have distant healing, and they're like, well, you can't have magnetic fields involved, but with Bankston, I have to see the same waves, local and distant. So it didn't matter. So whatever this connecting is doesn't matter. You see the same electromagnetic signature, the same effects. It makes sense, right? If you can heal from a distance, it's going to be affecting the body the same way as you're healing, pretty much. I can imagine more intense locally, but. So it's a dual level. Whatever it is, you can call it what you want. So summary. Magnetic field strength, and I haven't talked about voltage potential, maybe indicators of health. And I would love to have a Fitbit that measures the magnetic field, Anyway, so knowing the energies of the body, how to strengthen the magnetic field, how to charges built up release, could guide individuals in their relationships and also in maintaining their own health. And healing bioenergetic activities may involve both electromagnetic and subatomic mechanisms. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you.